All right, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get started, and then if you guys have any audio issues or visual issues, definitely let us know in the chat, and then anyone that comes along can kind of pick up where we're at. So, hi everyone, and welcome. My name is Brian. I'm the events coordinator here at Alertus Technologies. I'll be your moderator for today. During this webinar, Ben Brewer, our Director of Product Management here at Alertus, will discuss AlertAware, our personal recipient app solution that protects your organization from threats and communicates with those who need it in the most critical times of saving lives. So our session today will be from 1 to 2. We'll begin with an in-depth presentation from Ben, and then we'll have the opportunity to engage with Ben to go over any questions you guys might have at the end. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared after today's session. So without further ado, Ben, please take it away.
All righty. Thank you, Brian. Well, good afternoon, everybody. We really appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy days to join us for this webinar to discuss the AlertAware mobile app and how it can improve your emergency communication strategies within your organization. Just a little bit about me. My background, professional background, I do have 25 years in the field as an emergency manager. In that capacity, my primary focus was on critical communications, response planning, test, and evaluation. Worked in a good number of operation centers around the globe over the years. I actually finished out my professional career last 3 years in the Pentagon, where I oversaw the command and control element of emergency management for the U.S. Air Force. Had about 3,100 people at 247 locations around the globe that I was responsible for. I've been out on the commercial sector, out in the commercial sector for the last 17 years. And as you might imagine, my passion for emergency and risk communications really remains undaunted. It was what I did for so many years on the practitioner side. It's really nice to be on this side of the fence and assisting in crafting solutions that support our fellow practitioners in the space. So I'm really looking forward to sharing some information with you guys from a product management perspective, really talking about the system capabilities, the functions, the feature sets that are available to our customers who opt to use AlertAware and the AlertAware mobile app. So with that, a little bit on what we're going to be covering today. I'll just give you a moment to take a look at the agenda, but we'll step through here relatively smartly. There's some areas that I want to focus on a little bit more than others, but I do want to kind of leave you with a sense of the comprehensive nature of this particular solution that we call AlertAware. Now, if you're familiar with Alertus at all, you've probably heard about and explored a little bit the Alertus notification system, which is really our flagship product line. It's comprised of 10 different product elements, major product elements, and really a comprehensive solution. But Alertus is focused predominantly on unified facility mass notification, and unified facility mass notification is a lot different than what we're going to talk about when it comes to AlertAware and this class of emergency notification systems that are known within the code as distributed recipient mass notification systems, or DRMNS. Now, unified facility mass notification systems are really geared on utilizing the organization's infrastructure to make sure that they have the ability to notify any stakeholder, regardless of their organizational affiliation, at any point within the facility or on the campus. And ultimately, we're not really seeking in those types of solutions to qualify that Ben, Brian, and others have individually received and acknowledged alerts. There is that capability, but when you're using an overhead PA system, when you're using an outdoor voice notification system, when you're leveraging the fire alarm control panel, you're not really targeting individuals. You're targeting endpoints, and really seeking to distribute that mass notification to as many endpoints and saturate the space to make sure that people have the ability to receive those alerts. Now, DRMNS are a lot different. They are focused specifically on qualifying that individuals or groups of individuals receive the alerts. and that they are taking actions to respond to them. And in some instances, they collect information specific to the individual response. For example, an organization would typically use a distributed recipient mass notification system to recall an incident management team or an emergency operations center team, and they would use that system to collect those responses to understand who amongst that target set is available to respond to the alert, return and report for duty, and perhaps even collect information as to what time those individuals can be back on campus to engage in managing whatever incident has emerged. These types of systems also inherently they focus on more personal communication modalities. They include SMS text, email, voice calls, push notifications via mobile app. So when you hear me say push notification, we're really talking about using the mobile application for that communication. Social media channels like Facebook, X, WhatsApp, any number of things, as well as even business communication systems can kind of be rolled into that in some points, such as Microsoft Teams. And then obviously, some of those solutions actually have a desktop alerting element that might be somewhat similar to the alerts notifications desktop alerting capability. Now, the modalities that I've highlighted in bold, that probably stood out to you guys as soon as you saw the slide, those are the four core personal recipient notification modalities that are included within AlertAware, depending upon the level of subscription that a customer decides to adopt. And it can be one or more of those types of modalities. AlertAware is not one of those solutions where if you only have a push notification capability, sorry, you're going to have to pay for everything else. We actually have deployment models that support any combination of these types of communication strategies moving forward. These types of systems can also include integrations with third-party systems, and Alertus is, again, if you're familiar with the Alertus notification system, the alerts notification system is one of the most integration friendly emergency notification platforms out there in the market today because it has the ability to integrate with other systems at the analog or the digital level in any number of ways to achieve any number of effects. And obviously, with AlertAware and Alertus being two of Alertus Technologies' core products, those two products very natively integrate with one another. We can also integrate with other business communication systems. I've already mentioned Teams, but some of the others that come to mind are Slack, business communication, and then of course we do have the ability to integrate with other third-party DRMNS systems that are out there in the field that have been long-standing partners with Alertus Technologies, such as Everbridge and Rave alerts, for example. I also want to talk a little bit about UL 2572 conformance because when it comes to DRMNS are probably best described if you're not really familiar with that term. The best way to get acquainted with the way that code addresses these types of systems is to take a look at Chapter 24 of NFPA 72, which is the fire alarm system code that's widely adopted within the United States, and its corresponding UL listing 2572. And both of those two documents really define how these types of systems should perform. And AlertAware fully conforms with the elements of 2572. The main focus of 2572 with regard to DRMNS is how quickly and how efficiently these systems can deliver emergency alerts and notifications from the time that either a sensor event is received that would trigger the system to activate or a privileged user interfaces with either the mobile app or the user interface via a web browser and initiates an activation. If you've never read or had an opportunity to take a look at UL 2572, UL 2572 requires that these systems, from the time that something hits the go button, um, you've got 10 seconds to make things happen. And AlertAware fully conforms with that. And it is a little bit incremental. The UL 2572 standard is written incrementally. So it's, from the time a user hits go, you've got 10 seconds for the system to acknowledge that command and start its evolution. And then from the time it issues the communication packets out to, let's say, an SMS aggregator or the push notification gateway, we're talking 10 seconds, and AlertAware fully conforms with that. So I just wanted to kind of mention that, just in the event that you might be curious with regard to what types of standards apply to these systems. There really aren't that many. There are a lot of recommendations, and there's an awful lot of research with regard to DRMNS dating all the way back to, really back to 1903 with the San Francisco fires. But one of the most noteworthy that I've come across was the 1965 Platte River flood event in Denver, Colorado. And there was a lot of extensive research done on these types of systems, even though they weren't called DRMNS back in the day. But it really talked about how stakeholders interface with these types of systems, the level of trust. What does it take for somebody to receive a telephone call or some sort of social media or media? Back in the day, television, radio were very consistently used. They still are to this date. But what does it take to get constituents or affected stakeholders to respond to these types of alerts? And over the years, even despite all of the research that's been done, and the compulsory need that is laid out within OSHA, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Act, it it's really kind of ambiguous as to what these systems need to be. So NFPA 72 and UL 2572, if you want to get a little bit more familiar and a little bit more detail on these types of performance qualifications that these systems need to have, would be a very good source for you moving forward. So we'll start to pick up the pace a little bit now that we've got an understanding of what AlertAware is. Um, With regard to AlertAware, it is a shared hosted emergency notification system, which is very consistent with other platforms that are out in this particular market sector. We do host the system. It's a very robust architecture with a lot of redundancies built into and safeguards built into the system, but it is hosted within AWS data centers within the United States. And it's very important that we call that out, just in the event that we have anybody on the webinar that is outside of the US. It's very important that we disclose that all of the data that's associated with these types of systems is housed within the United States. We do operate through a single trusted URL, and each login is associated specifically with an organization using a very complex logical factor that serves to ensure that we can logically and safely and securely segregate one customer's data from another, so that we don't have any opportunities for data spills, and equally important, we don't have any opportunities for organization A to inadvertently activate an alert for organization B. The systems these days, with the way that they're architected, are very safe and secure in that manner, and AlertAware is no different. But when it comes to signing into the AlertAware console, and you kind of see a snapshot of it on the screen, we support various factors, various approaches to authenticate privileged users into the system. And given the fact that we're focusing on the mobile app today, it's really important to understand that we are talking about privileged users, because even when it comes to the mobile application use, individuals need to log into that app so that we know exactly who has that app, that they're authorized to receive alerts on behalf of the organization, and you all will have the ability to track their status when it comes to, has been received, and more importantly, did he acknowledge or confirm receipt of that message. So we do support single factor authentication using a username along with a password, but many of our customers prefer more secure methodologies, such as single sign-on. And natively, the platform supports Google SSO, as well as just recently the Apple sign in, but we also support others using the SAML 2.0 pathways. Azure Active Directory, I wanted to go ahead and voice it in that manner, just in case you're not familiar with the fact that Azure AD, which is the cloud variant of Microsoft Active Directory, has been renamed by Microsoft over to Microsoft Entra ID. But we support Entra ID / Azure AD for single sign-on, as well as a good number of other SAML 2.0 platforms, including Okta and Duo. The nice thing about the way that we implement single sign-on is that in the event that you do opt to integrate your single sign-on solution with AlertAware, and your single sign-on solution has a multi-factor authentication layer, AlertAware has the ability to inherit that layer. So the login and the authentication aspect of accessing AlertAware would be no different for your stakeholders than what they experience with other information systems within your environment that are utilizing that same pathway. So with regard to AlertAware, I think it's nice for you guys to know that what you see on the screen right here is what we call the light mode. We also have a dark mode, and I do have some screenshots that are in dark mode a little bit later on in the presentation. And then of course, once you're logged in, you have the ability to log out, right? Obviously, on the mobile app side, one of the things that we encourage our mobile app recipients, what we call a reader, to do is make sure you do not log out of the mobile app, because doing so breaks what we call a security token within the AlertAware mobile app. And the individual, even though they still may be opted in to receive mobile alerts, they won't have the ability to do so until they reestablish that keychain. So once a customer is logged into the interface, the displays will look a little bit different, um, depending upon the user role. And we'll talk about the user roles here on the next slide. What you see depicted on the screen is what is indicative of those who have the owner and the administration type role. And we'll talk about the difference between those two roles. And a lot of what is done for the majority of our customers that have AlertAware and they integrate it with Alertus as kind of like its partner in crime, and they activate AlertAware via Alertus. A lot of the time is spent just within the settings, getting the system configured, getting users and groups, which we'll talk about in a little bit, set up in the system. And then once the system's configured, whether an organization wants to activate Alertus and AlertAware via AlertAware, or whether they want to activate it via Alertus, it's really, you're able to do so very seamlessly without having to jump from one information system to another. And even though I'm talking about the integration that exists between AlertAware and Alertus, it's very important to understand that AlertAware is a standalone product, and it does not have to be integrated with Alertus, nor does a customer have to purchase Alertus in order to utilize AlertAware. But for those that are looking for a unified solution that includes both facility and personal recipient notification features and functions, this might be a great solution to look at. But once an owner or administrator is logged into the system, they have the ability, up on the upper right-hand corner, they have the ability to interact with their account settings, and they can set up their preferences, such as, do I want the light mode, the dark mode? Do I want things to display in a list, or would I prefer them to be in a grid? It really, we want to try to put as much control into each individual owner and user's hand, as well as anybody who is what we call a reader. We want you all to really be able to control your user experience in the way that whether it's the AlertAware platform, which is the user interface, or the mobile app, which is a very, very direct emulation of what you see on the screen. We want you all to be able to control that engagement. Now, of course, there are certain aspects of the system that really fall to the owner and the administrator to set, and some of those are, updating the account settings or the organizational profile to include logos, and banners so that you can replace the AlertAware that you see on the screen with an organizational logo. That then translates into the email as well as the push notifications, in an effort to really kind of heighten that trust so that when your stakeholders are receiving an alert, they're receiving it in a manner that is branded to your organization. And research has shown countless number of times over the years that being able to directly associate or receive notification with the organization that the member belongs to versus seeing AlertAware will indeed help heighten that trust and kind of limit perhaps their need or their need to reach out and find a secondary source that would corroborate what they just received. Because again, over time and through after action reporting and research on countless numbers of emergency incidents, an awful lot of them associated with active shooters, one of the biggest trends was that affected stakeholders oftentimes did not believe the first notification that they received. They oftentimes sought an opportunity to corroborate via a secondary source that what they had was accurate before they responded. And in instances such as tornado warnings, active shooter events, where really milliseconds means lives, anything that we can do via the system with regard to configuration and its behavior to help heighten and increase that trust factor from the word go is definitely worth the time and effort to pay attention to. And then, of course, owners and administrators would have the ability to work with integrations, establish self-registration portals that we'll talk about, as well as customize the incident and emergency reporting features and functions within the system. So I promised you a little bit on the various roles, the user roles within AlertAware. Given the fact that we're really kind of focusing on the mobile application here, the biggest thing to remember is that it's got to be a privileged user. In order to receive push notifications, we have got to have an established user account within the system that has a password associated with it, and the individual must have logged in, opted in to receive push notifications. They don't necessarily need to opt in to share their location via the AlertAware mobile app. I think that's always a very, very personal decision. However, it can be beneficial with regard to incident and emergency reporting if that feature is used, but it's not necessarily an element. So the three privileged roles that we have within the system are the owner. The way that I typically kind of differentiate an owner from an administrator is that the biggest difference between the owner and the admin is that the owner holds the keys. The owner has the ability to make those key AlertAware configuration changes, and really control the way that AlertAware is going to function for the entirety of the organization. Administrators can most certainly see what the owner has applied with regard to these configuration changes, but they're really limited to more in line with regard to creating and managing groups, importing and maintaining user and recipient database, creating notification templates, and they can obviously activate. And then, of course, if incident reporting is being used, they can actually engage in that communication with the affected user. The owner can do all of those as well. But again, those three key differentiators are really the feature options, the way that the system is going to behave, that is all controlled at the owner level. And then the third privileged role that we have is the reader. And the reader is the individual that is going to receive those mobile alerts via the AlertAware mobile app. And if incident and or emergency reporting is enabled, they would have the ability to initiate these incident reports or these emergency reports that then go to the owners and the administrators, and they might even go to AlertAware if that's been configured to trigger other larger, more unified system activations. But a lot of things that the reader can influence, but they cannot see, touch, or feel activations within the system. So it's really a very compressed use case with regard to what they see when they're logged into the mobile app as compared to what an owner or an administrator would see when logged into the mobile app. And the fourth role that we have is what we call a recipient role, and it is a non-privileged role within the system. Anybody that is introduced into the system as a recipient, they would have the ability, assuming that the organization is using these alerting modalities, they would have the ability to receive SMS text messages, email messages, as well as voice calls, again, if those are being used. But they do not have the ability to log in, manage their own contact data like a reader could, nor do they have the ability to, initiate incident or emergency reports within an organization. All right, so and proceed. So I know I think I was talking about groups when things kind of went blank on my end, and my apologies for my technical difficulties. But with regard to groups is typically a targeting strategy that is used by a good number of organizations. We do have some customers that are pretty much an all or none type notification strategy, but the majority, by and large, I'd say probably a 70-30 split, tend to target groups and even individuals that are not part of a group as part of a notification. So that group is really just a placeholder against which users and recipients are associated and targeted for emergency notification. When the important things to know about groups, just kind of in the um, being sensitive to time here, is that groups can actually be set up to where they're auto subscription, meaning that it kind of enhances the database administration for the owners and the admins, to ensure that people that are added to the system, regardless of how they're added to the system, and we'll talk about those pathways here in the next couple of slides, they'd be automatically associated with those particular groups, or they can actually be set up as being visible, but perhaps protected by a PIN code so that affected stakeholders could subscribe to receive groups that are perhaps specific to campus locations or operating locations, or maybe even specific to a functional area within the organization. Now, with regard to user and recipient management, we do have the ability within the system to manually manage users and recipients, and that's usually an effective way forward for very, very, very small organizations. But we also have other ways to enhance user and recipient management via import capabilities, either secure or manual, SFTP, for example, or just a manual data import, or we can even synchronize groups and users via a Microsoft Entra ID integration. Self-registration portal, which I'll also cover, is an alternative and very, very popular with a lot of our customers to support dynamic use cases. And then within AlertAware, you always have the ability to export your users and recipients so that you can review them and kind of have them available, perhaps as annexes to emergency response plans, just to have that understanding of who would receive an alert under what conditions. Now, with regard to um, for user and recipient management, when it comes to data sync functionalities, this is indicative of a manual import or an SFTP import. And um, Alertus has the ability to set up and host SFTP containers on behalf of their customers, but also, we do have the ability to connect to and utilize SFTP containers and servers that are already being utilized by our customers. This type of an approach is very popular when other information systems like ADP, Workday, and even Salesforce are being used to export user and recipient contact information. And the approved pathway, again, very similar across this industry, is that this content gets exported into a CSV file that is then either manually or automatically imported into the AlertAware system. I also mentioned Entra ID, Microsoft Entra ID. The important thing to remember about integrating with Microsoft Entra ID is that this is the cloud variant of Microsoft Active Directory. So AlertAware currently integrates with the cloud Microsoft Entra ID, and we have the ability to synchronize groups and users, and we can do so every 24 hours or every 48 hours. So anybody that is added or deleted from the system during that next synchronization, however the owner has set that up, they will be automatically deleted or added into this system and associated or disassociated with groups within the AlertAware system. Um, the one requirement that we do have is that any of our customers that opt to use Microsoft Entra ID to synchronize their users and groups, they do need to create an AlertAware all users group within Entra ID that is automatically synced with the system. And that's our way of ensuring that as certain groups might be desynchronized with AlertAware, that we don't inadvertently desynchronize users that should still be associated with receiving notifications that would focus on all affected stakeholders. I also mentioned the fact that we do have a self-registration portal. Self-registration portals are created by and managed by the system owner. So each organization has got to have at least one owner. We definitely recommend two or more owners just to ensure that self-registration portal control, organizational configuration, and API key generation and maintenance is sustainable moving forward over the life of the system. But AlertAware is somewhat unique in the fact that it supports more than one self-registration portal. So organizations have the ability to establish self-registration portal for very specific needs. And some of the examples that we've come across are employee focused self-registration portals that are um, somewhat controlled based on the email domain that the subscriber enters. You know, perhaps they have to subscribe using their organizational email. Um, but we also have others such as students, faculty, parents, visitors, as well as special events. And the one that always comes to mind to me is like a commencement ceremony because it's an event that occurs on a scheduled date. And organizations can establish the self-registration portal, have it go active a certain number of days before that scheduled event, and even within the self-registration portal, they can control when that self-registration portal expires and when everybody that subscribed via the portal would be automatically purged from the AlertAware system. So you can see there are a good number of ways that you administer the critical data that's associated with these types of systems, and in an automated way so that it minimizes the burden on your system administrators and owners. So the next part that we'll talk about are templates and activations, and very similar to any emergency notification system, we have different ways to activate alerts. We have what we call custom activation, which is typically used to plan and prepare pre-canned one-touch templates, but they can also be used for alerting in ad hoc scenarios that the organization perhaps they didn't anticipate the risk of that type of incident befalling them, and they just don't have anything prepared within the system that might be appropriate to activate in response or relation to the ongoing incident. But custom activations really kind of starts you out with a blank slate, and those are typically again reserved for those areas where you're providing follow-on messaging that you have the time to prepare versus having the compelling need to prepare all of those templates. And then we have what we call a one-touch template within AlertAware, and I'll show you a little bit about what that looks like. But a one-touch template means that all of the elements of the alert notification are already prepared and saved within the system, and it's ready to go. Now, the image that you see over on the right, we have what we call template categories within the system. those large tiles are each indicative of a template category. And a template category is somewhat similar to a group, where groups are focused on users and recipients. A template category is focused on grouping like type notification templates under a single location. And these are designed to be visible. What you see here is what we call a grid view. Very popular with people like me who are more of a visual operator, to where I'm looking for visual cues versus wanting to read the text to make sure that I understand and agree with, the template category that I need to be in. But they're a quick reference so that those types of templates are automatically grouped in that area, and we can very quickly activate alerts at need. Now, what you see on the screen is just kind of a visual depiction of what a one-touch template activation would look like. Once I get into the template category, I would similarly, if I've set up my system to be in grid view, which I do, I would see a grid with a tile for each one-touch template that is associated with that particular area. And then I can either click on and then activate that one-touch template, or if I need to modify something, because again, a one-touch template is fully static, and what you see depicted in the image on the right side of the screen, there's not one element that a user can interact with and change prior to activating, i.e. clicking on that yes button at the bottom. But if there was something that I needed to change, either with regard to adding an additional recipient or group, or perhaps altering the notification content, by clicking on the three ellipses on the one-touch template title, I can enter edit mode and make changes and then activate directly from that screen. All right. Do want to talk a little bit about event management, because oftentimes within distributed recipient mass notification solutions, they provide some degree of event management. And within the AlertAware system, we have opted to focus on supporting the organization in understanding what alerts were activated in relation to what event. So events, very similar to a template category or a group, they are a placeholder against which an organization can associate specific activations. And where this is most useful is when you have compulsory activities that have to occur. Let's say a monthly fire alarm that has to be documented and you have to report on it at the end of the year. Creating an event that would be called monthly fire alarm evacuation tests might be very useful, and then grouping all those activations that occur over each of the 12 months, very helpful in reviewing what was done in relation to that compulsory activity, and support a little bit more effective report preparation within the higher education sector. In the event that we do have anybody from that sector on or watching this webinar, one of the most popular events that we have in that regard are Clery Act activations, either with regard to the compulsory testing of the emergency notification, or the activation of the system in instances where it was supporting alerting constituents about campus crime. Very, very helpful. And then again, for other types of incidents or events like tornado warnings or an actual tornado strike that hits a campus, or heaven forbid, an active shooter event, you have the ability to group those types of activations against that event, so that when you do get into the recovery and the post-recovery phases of the incident management process, it'll give you and your team the opportunity to sit down and look at, in relation to this particular event, what alerts did we activate? What went right? What didn't go so well? What can we do better? What did we do exceedingly well that we need to make sure that we're cognizant of, to make sure that we formalize that and emphasize that in our policies and our procedures? And again, to support that after action reporting. All right, we're starting to draw to the close here, but incident and emergency reporting is a very important feature and function that's associated directly with the mobile application, the AlertAware mobile application. And again, it is an optional capability. So organizations most certainly can leverage AlertAware and the AlertAware mobile app just so that they can disseminate the push notifications and receive those confirmations back. But some organizations may want to receive information specific to incidents and emergencies that are ongoing on the campus. And before I get too wrapped up in talking about what you see on the screen, I do want to give you a little bit of a characterization of what an incident is and what an emergency is. I typically tend to look at an incident and they can be very, very similar, but the big difference is in the sense of urgency that the reporting individual feels specific to their personal safety. Incidents are very deliberate process, and they require that the reporting individual select the incident type that they're going to report, provide amplifying information on that incident. They have the opportunity to upload up to 10 images to help owners and administrators better understand what is unfolding and what the reporting individual is seeing, and then they can go ahead and submit the incident report. An emergency report, as we'll cover on this next screen, is much more time sensitive, and it's really more characterized as a personal duress button. But what you see depicted on the screen is an example of an individual that is reporting civil unrest in the area, and an instance where an organization has enabled two-way chat specific to that incident type. And we're going to talk about the degree of control that you as an organization would have over the incident and emergency reporting experience within your particular AlertAware instance. But in this particular example, I decided to have two-way chat enabled. And what happens is that when an individual initiates an incident, and this would be true of an emergency report as well, so long as two-way chat is enabled for that incident or emergency type. Everybody that is in the system as an owner or an admin, they're going to receive an SMS, text message, an email alert, and they will also be notified via their AlertAware mobile app that there is an open incident. In this case, it would be letting them know that Ben has initiated a civil unrest incident report. And then the owners and the admins can interact with, they can view the incident report. If two-way chat is enabled, they can seek amplifying information from the individual in the field. And what's interesting, and what I would like to point out here, is our strategy specific to two-way chat. Because any owner, any admin can engage in that two-way chat with the reporting individual, we want to make sure that we're doing so in a manner that informs the owners and the admins, which the center image is what the owners and the admins would see. So you would know, and I realize this is a duplicate, but on the left side of the screen is where we've got the administrator and the owner engaging with the reporting individual. um, actually it's the reverse. On the right is the owner and the administrator in that central screen. On the left is the reporting individual responding to them. But the owners and the admins can see who amongst the owner admin group is engaging with the reporting individual. Whereas on the right side, this is a depiction of the chat within the mobile app itself. And the reporting individual only knows that they are speaking with somebody that is in an administrative capacity. And the reason why we do that is that there's research that indicates that individuals that are reporting a situation that are communicating with what is perceived to be a single entity, it tends to keep their level of stress down, and it keeps them engaged in the chat. Whereas if they start seeing that they're talking with Ben, Brian, Scott, Jim, Laura, and Sue, that might heighten their degree of stress a little bit, and the two-way chat might not be as efficient as it otherwise might be. Okay. Now, I did tell you already that the emergency reports are very urgent, and because we tend to look at them as a personal duress reporting methodology, all they need to do is just open the app, select emergency or report emergency, as you see on the left image down in the bottom left part of the slide. And then they select the emergency type, which is depicted as a tile, that second image inward. As soon as they select, let's say, for example, hold and secure, the report is gone. There's no confirmation. So it is very, very similar to a personal duress alert, to where so much so that if this screen is not worked with in the appropriate manner, you know, once those tiles are touched and the finger comes off of that tile, that alert is out and into the system. So for that very reason, because it is a very sensitive, almost like has a hair trigger to it, if you will, and there is no confirmation before that personal duress is sent to the owners and the admins, it can lead to an increase in false activations if awareness and education with your stakeholders does not support, getting them familiar with working with the emergency report functionality. So along that line, you do have the ability to disable emergency reporting, even though you have enabled incident reporting within the system. And the converse is true as well. And in the event that you are interested in using the two-way chat, you have the ability, the owner has the ability to make that determination as to whether two-way chat is going to be live across the entire system or whether it's going to be disabled across the entire system. And even once they enable it within the system, you can see from the image in the bottom right-hand quadrant of the slide, they have the ability to really tailor what happens for those incident types, whether it's an incident report or an emergency report. And for example, you can see you have the ability, if you look down toward the bottom where it says technology and infrastructure event, those two particular incident types, they will only be sent to AlertAware. So anytime somebody initiates one of those two events, owners and admins will be made aware via SMS, email, and the AlertAware mobile app, assuming that they're using it. But two-way chat isn't involved, and that notification content is not being sent to Alertus. And the value of sending it to Alertus in some instances is that organizations may have an incident type that when it's reported, they want it sent to Alertus so that they can leverage desktop notification, for a small group of people, let's say, for example, security operations team, or a school resource officer, to ensure that they know that Ben initiated a hold and secure at this time, and here's his location. But you can also utilize that functionality to activate other alerts simultaneously. So in addition to sending an alert to the security team to let them know that Ben initiated a hold and secure, the system alertus system could automatically activate a hold and secure preset alert at the same time without any human intervention. So there's a lot of benefit there. You do see an example down there at the very bottom. If somebody were to ever report some sort of severe weather via the AlertAware mobile app, in this particular example, it's not going to populate AlertAware, but it's going to go directly to Alertus to let decision makers know that somebody has seen something, because I'm sure all of us have had those experiences where we're not in a tornado warning, but you walk outside and the winds are pretty swirly and trees flying everywhere. So, having the ability to kind of have that first person reporting capability might be of value in that particular area. The final area I'm going to touch on in a minute is the ability to integrate Alertus and AlertAware. And as I mentioned very early in the presentation, our whole goal with the integration between these two products is to make sure that regardless of which product you want to use as your primary activation point, the other system is sitting there fully configured and ready to go, just kind of waiting in the wings to be activated by or interacted with through the API uh, the API connection that exists between the two platforms. We do use a REST API, so it's highly secure. As I mentioned, I talked about the owner being the holder of the keys. You can generate multiple API keys to support multiple integrations between these platforms. But when you are activating Alertus via AlertAware, the image on the upper right side of the screen kind of depicts that. Alertus actually becomes a notification modality. And when you select Alertus as a notification modality, it is leveraging an Alertus user account that has been applied to your AlertAware instance. And the users will be able to see and activate preset alerts that are established within the system. And indicative of each of the two integration pathways, AlertAware can override pre-existing notification content that's been established within Alertus. And when activating via Alertus, you can also override that notification content that is contained within the AlertAware one-touch templates that are being targeted, if that is the modality that's being used. But when we're talking about using the Alertus notification system to activate AlertAware, the I would say probably 9.5 out of 10 customers are using what we call an AlertAware custom activation alert service within the system. And they are activating AlertAware notification modalities by targeting groups within AlertAware. Whereas that bottom alert service that you see that's labeled AlertAware One Touch Activation, that would require you to build out One Touch templates within the AlertAware system and then target those directly. And you could either target those in a manner to where the notification content that is built into the One Touch template is what goes out over the selected alerting modalities, or you could override that with the Alertus notification text. The other important thing to recognize, regardless of whether you're just activating and interacting with AlertAware in a standalone capacity, or whether you're interacting with it in an integrated capacity, is that you have the ability, in the event that you're using more than the mobile app, i.e. the push notification, you have the ability to customize the alert content from one modality to the other. And what we most frequently see is that the SMS text messaging in particular, because the industry standard is no more than 160 characters, we want to make sure that you have the ability, in the event that you're dealing with a 480 character weather advisory, we want to make sure that you have that ability to customize the SMS to be very accurate and brief, and give them the opportunity to consume the alert without having to go elsewhere. So with that, I'll go ahead and close out. And again, I apologize for my technical issues on my end, and I can address one or two questions in the time that we have remaining.
Yep, looks like we got a couple questions here. Let's pull them up. Yes, so the first one is, what stands out to you as being some of the discriminators that might make AlertAware more appealing to an organization than some of the other personal recipient alerting services?
So with regard to that, I think that probably the first and foremost discriminator is that AlertAware is not constructed as a, you've got to buy it with all options in order to be able to utilize the system. And a lot of the systems that are out and available on the market may have some features and functionalities that we have as options that can be added on, that have to be purchased and rolled out. So a lower cost point year over year. And that's obviously important from a budgeting perspective, but from a functional perspective, I think it gets back to the integration capability and the ability to support what we call dynamic alerting. Not very many solutions out there on the market support dynamic alerting. There are two different types of alerting. Static alerting means that something happens and an alert, it's a one-to-one type thing. If this happens, that happens. Dynamic alerting means that if this happens, this, that, and the other can result with regard to emergency alerting. And I talked a little bit about that with regard to the personal duress, to where you've got different groups, different stakeholder groups that need different information in order to be able to respond to and manage the incident that is besetting the organization. Dynamic alerting is the ability to automatically activate multiple alerts simultaneously to support whatever the emerging incident is, and then remain situationally aware within the system to support escalation across the environment. And the best example that I can roll out there would be a suspicious person or a hostile actor within a multi-building campus. If your response protocol supported it and it was kicked off by a personal duress, the security team would know who's reporting it and where. The affected facility could perhaps go into a run, hide, fight or a lockdown. All other unaffected facilities that are in close proximity might go into a lockout or a hold and secure type alerting posture. And then as the situation evolves, if that hostile actor or suspicious person gets into another building and somebody starts to pressing a panic button over in that area, that newly affected building could escalate into a lockdown, run, hide, fight. The initial building remains in the lockdown, run, hide, fight. All others remain in the lockout or the hold and secure. And the security team continues to receive these incoming alerts, letting them know what is going on. So it's a vastly more capable system in that regard than a good number of other systems within the space.
And then we got one final question here, and it's, are there any plans to build out a desktop alert capability for AlertAware?
Okay, that's a good question because desktop alerting is typically included in DRMNS. Obviously, with regard to AlertAware, given the fact that the alerts notification has a desktop notification client, the initial thought was, hey, we don't need it. We've got the desktop notification client in Alertus. At least we don't need it initially. However, we do have a very robust development roadmap that we'd love to discuss with anybody that's interested, any customers or prospects, that includes the introduction of an AlertAware desktop alert capability in the not too distant future.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. So thanks again, Ben, and thanks for everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions about today or need any additional information, please feel free to email us at events@alertus.com and we'll be happy to assist you. And remember that you will get a recording of this webinar sent to you very shortly. And yeah, once again, thanks everyone for joining us and have a great day. Thanks, guys.